Two simple thought processes that makes you an idiot if you believe in the Bible. That many Bible believers like to say this provides validity or credibility to the Bible. If you utilize these two arguments, you're an idiot, plain and simple. So argument number one, this is the lesser of the two. But argument number one is the fact that people will say that, well, when you look at the Bible and how it is written, every person who is named in the Bible actually fulfills the destiny of their name. And the Bible cleverly names these people so that as they grow older, they fulfill a certain destiny and people will accept that. Only God could have done that. Only God could have created that. True, if it was done in real time. But the problem that you have is that the story of Moses, which means he was brought out of the waters, didn't and was not written at the time frame of Moses. It was written hundreds, if not 1,000 years later. So it doesn't fit. So if I'm writing a narrative, of course I can make his name Moses because it fits in our language. Moses, that's what it means. And since that's where he's going to be plucked out of the waters, I'm going to name him Moses. If I'm going to name a child Jacob, and I know the child is in this story, this person is going to be, a trickster. And in our language, the name Jacob means trickster. And then later on, when he goes through his hero's journey, he's going to become a worshiper of this god El. So when I write this story, I think I'll name this character Jacob because he's a trickster and he's from the beginning. He grabs at the heel. He's a heel grabber and he's a trickster. So I'm going to name him Jacob because that's what the name means in our language. And then when he fights with God, battle with God, then I'm going to change his name to Israel because Israel means someone who worships this God, submits to this God, a child of this God, a servant of this God. And we're going to rename the whole people that because the whole people are going to become the ones who submits to this God and reigns with this God. So Jacob turns to Israel. Yeah. If I'm writing this story hundreds, if not 1,000 years after the so-called events are supposed to have happened, then that's how I'm going to name the people in the Bible so that it fits. Whether I'm talking about Seth, whether I'm talking about Lamech, whether I'm talking about Adam. Hey, we're going to talk about the first man ever created. What is our word for man? Adama. Let's name him Adam. What is the name of the mother, the creator of all things, the birther of all things? Eve. Oh, let's name his wife Eve. Since I'm writing this story, I'm telling the story in around the 8th century, maybe even writing it, but I'm definitely writing this story in around the 5th and 6th century. We're going to name them Adam and Eve because the name fits the description of how these people act, what they did, their importance to the entire narrative. So it makes sense to name them that. That's not a valid argument that you want to use because any writer today can write a story about the past and give the people names that have meanings to that. Let me give you an example from my childhood. If I wanted to write a story about a woman who was very promiscuous in the 80s and 90s, how many of you right now in your mind already know that the name that I would probably give that woman is Candy? I would probably name her Candace, but as she goes through her hero journey and then she falls into sexual perversiveness, we're going to call her Candy now. Why? Because I know that in the 80s and 90s, any woman named Candy was looked upon as being a sexually active woman, whether she was or not, that she was in it to win it for all things. And then when she comes out of it and she gains herself, I might change her name from Candace to like Charlotte or Charlene, give her a different name, something that's more wife-like. But when she wasn't wife-like, her name is Candy. Even when you walk, I'm gonna name her that. Anyone who grew up in the 80s would know that. Anyone who grew up in the 90s would know that. So how hard is it for me to do that today? Not very. So how hard would it have been for those people at that time frame? Not very. Number one, Number one, dumbass argument is the fact that they will say that, well, the Bible is historical and everything that happened in the Bible is true because it lists and names places and kings who actually existed, and we have proof that those people existed. So since we know that the city of Jerusalem existed, then of course it is the city of David, so therefore David existed. Because it is the city of Jerusalem, and before that it was called Jabus, then the story of the man in Judges 19 and his journey is true. That he allowed for his concubine, he gave his concubine to these men in Gabreth to essay her until she died. So it's a true story because we know that it was Jabus when it was still a Canaanite city. We know that, these places like Nineveh is mentioned in the Bible. So since Nineveh is mentioned in the Bible, then the story between Hezekiah and Sennacherib, and in fact, in 108, an angel came and killed 180 of Sennacherib's troops. Then that must be true that they killed 180,000 of his troops, because Sennacherib, we have records of him. We know that the city of Nineveh existed. We found the city. So therefore, it must happen. All the other stuff must be true. But is it? Is it really? Let me give you a couple. We know and we have found the city of Troy. The city of Troy existed. The city of Troy demonstrates that it has multiple buildings of walls and different time frames, and that these walls reached really high during the time frame that Homer says that the Trojan War was fought. Does that mean that Achilles was a demigod and that he lived and that no one could pierce him other than through his ankle? Doesn't mean that at all. Most Christians will say, no, that doesn't mean a thing. But let me double down on the fact that they believe that since Nineveh is a city and it existed, that then the 180,000 that died at the hands of an angel must be true, even though the records in Nineveh show that Sennacherib pulled those troops out of there once Hezekiah started paying the tribute to him. That's Sennacherib's side of the story. But since, hey, we're saying Nineveh is true. Well, throughout the time immemorial, Nineveh has had many gods. Dagon was one of the more recent gods that was in Nineveh during the time frame of Hezekiah. So that would mean that the god Dagon is true, is real. But since there was also hosts of many other gods, like the moon goddess Sin, then the moon goddess Sin is true. So tonight, when y'all see the moon, you should pay worship to the moon goddess Sin. That Enlil, Enki, all these different gods existed who at one point in time frame resided in this city. So that being said, the fact that you are claiming a city existing is proof that your God exists or that your Bible is correct will be like me saying that, hey, New York exists. Spider-Man therefore exists. Oh, Obama was president. Spider-Man met Obama, I think. Him or Captain America. So those characters exist. Doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean that any of these characters actually existed. Yes, the city exists. Yes, the president exists. So just because Omri existed doesn't mean that Mesha sacrificed his son in order for them to win the war against the Israelites. Doesn't mean that at all. According to the Mesha stele, he didn't do that at all. He just prayed to his God, kicked the Israelites' ass, and then he took the sacraments for the Israelites and sacrificed it to his God Shamash. Two sides of the same story. One villainizes one side, the other villainizes the other side. It's normally how that bullshit goes. So no, doesn't validate your Bible. Because if you say your Bible is true about Omri and his dealings with Mesha, and that Mesha sacrificed his son, then you have to give the same level of credibility to the Mesha stele, where he says that he didn't sacrifice his son. He simply just whooped their ass and sacrificed the Israelite sacraments to his God. And that's why he won. So do not ever use those arguments. Those arguments are horrible for a believer to use because they are so easily thrown aside. Now, always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.